So, as seems to be the case with all of my trips, I flunked out of my last bikepacking trip because I got a flat tire when I was about halfway through doing the Durham section of the Trans-Canada Trail. I didn't have any spare inner tube, so unfortunately I had to bail out of that one. But I made the repairs, I replaced the inner tube, and now we're all set to finish that trip next week. And since it's a different season, it's obviously peak summer, I've made a bunch of different adjustments and upgrades and replacements, and I don't think I've ever shown you guys exactly what's in my summertime backpacking kit anyway. So I wanted to take a minute and show you everything that's in my midsummer electric bicycle bikepacking kit. So let's start with the bike itself. It's basically a stock Super 73 S1. It's the Rose Avenue edition, so it does have a slightly bigger battery at almost 700 watt hours. It's got 20-inch diameter, 4-inch wide fat bike tires. It's got a 500 watt hub motor in the rear, single speed chain drive. It's got 2 disc brakes, both of which are pretty loose right now. I actually got to tighten those up so that it's got more stopping power because I have a long stopping distance right now. I fixed the inner tube on this rear tire. This is the 3rd time I've had to swap out the inner tube on this wheel. And I'm not sure if you noticed, but I actually put the tire on backwards. The treads are facing the wrong way. I don't think it'll make too much of a difference, but I am aware that I've done that. So before I start going through the backpack, I want to go through everything I've got in this little green goodies bag here. Since I have the benefit of a bike platform, everything specifically for the bike, the charger, all the tools I need to fix the inner tube and everything all go in this bag. So first and foremost, the first thing I have in here is another spare inner tube, because F what happened to me last time where I got a flat and couldn't change it out and had to call off the trip. And at the rate this thing gets flats, I don't want to be left screwed in the middle of nowhere with no replacement again. I learned my lesson. Next up, I actually have a Two Peaks portable bike pump. Now, I bought this thing thinking it had a Schrader valve built into it or some sort of adapter, but it actually didn't come with anything. So currently this thing is absolutely useless to me until I get a Schrader adapter to connect it to the inner tubes that my bike uses. The next super important upgrade I made, if you watch the first 2 episodes of my bikepacking trip, you'll know that I just had the stock charger that this came with, which was like 2.5 amps. And that meant that this thing had a 5-hour charge time from empty to full. I don't want to do that again. So I went and bought a super janky 4 amp charger for this bike. So that cuts the charging time down to just under 3 hours, which is my target charging time for any of my electric rideables that I use on these trips. Then I've got the wrench that I use to torque the nuts off to remove the bike wheel. I've got a wire cutter to snip the zip ties that hold the motor cable in place. I've got all the hex keys that I need to tighten and change things out. And then just a bunch of extra zip ties because the cable has to be zip tied to the frame, and I have to snip 2 ties every time I need to remove that wheel to change out the inner tube or do any sort of maintenance. And then the last thing I have in there is just some 3D printed bike tire tools. Now, I 3D printed this in ABS and I put a little bit too much force on it yesterday when I was swapping out the inner tube on this thing, so it did break. I need to make some more. So the pack itself that I'm using is the Osprey Atmos 65 AG. So 65 liter Osprey pack with some sort of anti-gravity system that just reduces the jostling on your back. It's great for these sorts of electric rideable trips, but if I was doing an actual hiking backpacking trip, I'd probably look for something a little bit lighter that's not as heavy. But yeah, that's the pack that I use. All right, and now for all the meat and potatoes, all my actual backpacking gear. So first up on the list, mainly because I want to use it to sit on as I go through this so I don't get eaten alive by ants, is my sleeping pad. So I've used this on a couple trips now, only actually managed to use it once. But for warm weather, basically 3 season, I have swapped out from my climate insulated inflatable pad to a Z-Lite SOL. Good foam pad, and the reason I switched to a foam pad is it eliminates the chance of it popping. Super easy, super simple to set up. Once I get my tent set up, all I have to do with this is just pull it out of my bag and go, done. That's it, that's all it takes. Anything that cuts down on time and effort once you get to camp is a win in my book. So let's go around what's on the outside of the pack. I've got 4 1-liter smart water bottles, allowing me to have up to 4 liters of drinkable water at once. Now, when I'm on the move and I'm covering a lot of ground on an electric rideable like my e-bike here or my electric skateboard, I don't really need so much water, but since the bike's doing all of the work anyways, it just, why not, right? And I don't have to stop and fill up so frequently. It's a hot one today if you can't tell. So next up, in the front section here. Because I'm worried and paranoid about stuff falling out of the front section, I've actually had a few things kind of get pushed up and out. I actually use a 3D printed carabiner to clip on to all of the cords and stuff that are in there to have like a last ditch effort to stop it from falling out. And this isn't the only 3D printed pieces of kit that I have in my backpack. Keep a tally of how many different 3D printed things I have in here, you'd be surprised. In there I've got my Arcturus rain poncho slash shelter. When I'm on an electric rideable like this, I don't really need rain coverage because I shouldn't be using the electric rideable when it's raining anyways, because as I'm sure you can guess, batteries and electronics and rain don't mix very well. This bike's able to handle wet weather a little bit, so I did opt to include a rain poncho in here. It's a little bit heavy, it's no frog togs, but it has full coverage, covers me and my bag. And if something happens to my tent and the tarp that I have in there, then this can also break apart into a backup emergency shelter. Also in there is a bug net, black flies, deer flies, you name it, Canada has it trying to bite you. Bug spray, because as I just mentioned, bugs are a little insane at times. Sunscreen, because as you can see, it gets very sunny, very hot, and if you have the skin complexion that I do and you don't use this, you get roasted real fast. Waterproof case so I can put my phone in it if I get stuck in a torrential downpour or I have to do a water crossing. My Catadine Be-Free water filter so that if I need to fill up on water from a natural water source, I can filter water on the fly. Now, I've used this thing quite a lot. It's starting to get pretty clogged up. The run rate's pretty slow, so I should actually replace the cartridge on this, but it still works. Haven't had any water freeze in it. It's still perfectly functional. Also in here I've got all the cordage. It's got my ridge line in there, the cordage that I use to tie down my corners of my tarp to the pegs, and a little bit of duct tape for repairs. So on the front, 2 pouches on my hip belt here. In this one here, I just got a crap ton of snacks. It's mostly stuffed with these Cliff Bars. And I got some dried fruit in there as well, just so I can eat while I'm on the go and I don't have to pull apart my bag to get at food in the food bag, which is buried at the bottom. So I call it my tack snack pack. In this one here, it's just where I keep my wallet and my mask, just in case, you know, one of the few places that still asks that you wear a mask when you're in there. On the shoulder straps, I've got my rag. Like I said, it is absolutely boiling out on a day like today and I sweat a crap ton. So having this on the shoulder strap gives me something super fast and quick to just wipe the sweat off of my nasty forehead before it drips in my eyes. I don't know if you've ever had sweat get in your eyes, but your sweat is salty and salt in your eyes don't mix very well. Also on here, I've got my keys strapped to it, which does have the key for both my bike lock and the lock that removes the battery from the bike frame. In the top section, in the very top, I've got my multi-tool, which is the only cutting tool that I bring on a trip. And I've got my gas stove, just a little screw-on propane gas stove. So if I can't use a campfire, I do have something that I can use to cook or boil water with. And it folds up super light. It's not the most lightweight gas stove on the market, but it's reasonably small and it gets the job done. It's been pretty reliable so far. Now underneath that there is a second larger pouch on the lid. This is where I keep everything I might need access to in a reasonably fast amount of time. So I've got my toilet paper and my wet wipes for obvious reasons. I've got a backup paper map, antiperspirant, not deodorant, antiperspirant because I'm actually allergic to deodorant. Printed out paper itinerary of the trip that I'm actively on. In this case, it's finishing the last legs of that Durham Trans-Canada trail trip. Toothbrush and toothpaste. I found out that I'm super susceptible to cavities. I just finished getting 7 cavities filled over the last few months. So I am being a lot more diligent with my oral hygiene and brushing twice a day because I don't want to get cavities again. Also in here is my fire starting kit. I've got my ferro rod, 3 fire starter sticks, a book of matches. I've got a lighter in there. And then the last thing that's in there that's not really fire starting related, but I have it in there anyways, is just a backup option for purifying water. I've got a whole stack of aqua tabs in there, which are horrendously out of date and probably should be replaced with something that's not expired, but hey, I do have them. Also in here is my headlamp. Nothing fancy, it's literally just a Coleman 3 AAA headlamp that uses 3 AAA batteries I have in there. I've got some rechargeable ones in there. I'll show you my battery recharging setup once I get deeper into the main section of the pack. But yeah, some gear, it's okay to not have like top of the line, super ultra expensive. I think this was like 20 bucks at Walmart and it's lasted me perfectly fine. I've had it on quite a few trips. And the last thing that's in there, remember, keep a tally of how many of these I have. The 3D printed spork that I just did a video on. If you haven't watched that yet, check the link at the top of the screen. but essentially I've put this in my pack for some long-term testing. It's 3D printed. Be careful if you opt to 3D print anything that's going to come into contact with water or food or anything that you are consuming, because there are risks involved. I sort of know what I'm doing, so I'm evaluating this spork over the long term. You know, it's actually got quite a lot of flex and durability to it. It's not, if you've ever used those Light My Fire plastic sporks, those are super brittle and break super easy. This is a lot more flexible and seems more durable, but that's what the long-term testing's for. Flipping back around to the front, we have my sleep system setup, all stapled to the front here. Now, this is nothing new for those of you who have been with my channel for a while. It's the same battle box, one-man tent. It's basically a glorified bivvy with a tiny bit more headroom. I use 3D printed tent stakes with this instead of the aluminum ones it came with. Again, I'm trying to have as many 3D printed pieces of kit as I can. And aside from that, instead of the rainfly this came with, I've actually also replaced that with the huge AquaQuest tarp, so that I have more room as like a huge awning to store my bike and to store my electric skateboard under in case rain hits overnight. And then my very expensive electric rideable is not getting covered in rain. I've also got my sleeping bag. Now again, it is peak summer, so I don't need anything crazy. This is just a Mountain Warehouse Traveler 50 sleeping bag. I think the comfort rating is 15 degrees Celsius. I've slept with it down to 12 degrees Celsius in shorts and a t-shirt, and I've been fine. So I do know that I can get away with this at least until probably around the end of September. All right, moving on to the main compartment of the bag is all the really big and heavy duty stuff. First up, not something that most people would bring with them on any sort of backpacking trip, but in order for me to bring you guys content, I need to bring it, and that's all my filming gear. Nothing crazy. I no longer bring a DSLR or anything like huge and annoying like that. I've condensed it down to all GoPros. In here I've got my 2 GoPros, I've got my chest mount, I've got my head mount, I've got all the extra batteries and everything I need to film with that. All the charging setup for recharging the batteries on the go. Also in here I have a sweater, because late at night and early in the morning it does get cool enough around here to warrant it. Even though it's like probably 33 degrees right now Celsius, in the mornings it gets down to sometimes around 12, 13 degrees Celsius, and yeah, that's definitely sweater weather. Next up in here, I've got my cooking equipment. Same stuff that I've been using for eons. Got my stainless steel GSI cup that you can see has saw quite a few trips at this point. Same with my stainless steel cooker. And then if I bang out the inside of this, I've actually got 2 gas canisters. That lets me cycle between them. I'll burn one down until it's empty, and then I have a full one I could switch to, and then know that when I get to somewhere that I can restock up, I can replace the one that's empty. Next up, my electronics charging kit. In here, I've got an absolutely massive beast of a battery bank. It's the Anker 26,800 milliamp hour beast of a battery bank. Now, the reason I have such a humongous battery bank is because, like I said, I film all of my trips so I can bring them to you guys. So it's important that I have enough juice in here to charge all of my GoPro batteries. And it also gives me extra to keep my phone charged for navigation and keeping in contact with my wife and so on. It is heavy, it weighs a lot, but it gives me all the juice I need to be out in the woods without any power otherwise for like 3 or 4 days. Next up in here, like I mentioned, my headlamp uses AAA rechargeable batteries. So I have a total of 6 AAA rechargeable batteries. Obviously I've got 3 in my headlamp right now and the other set here. I always keep them charged at all times. And this is a little USB charger that I've done a video on. If you want to check that out, link up at the top of the screen there. But basically, it's a universal cylindrical battery charger. I don't know if you knew this, but AA's, AAA's, quadruple A's, even C and D cell batteries, they're all the same voltage, just with different capacities based on their size. So if you can fit one of those batteries in here, this can charge it. Obviously, I'm just using it for AAA batteries. On a given night, if I've used my headlamp for a reasonable amount of time the night before, I'll swap out the batteries to the fresh pair, and then one by one charge these once I'm at camp at the end of the day. It's a little bit finicky having to swap out batteries every hour and make sure they're all charged, but it is a working setup and it's working for me. Could be simplified, but better than nothing. And then aside from that, I've just got all the charging cords in there for charging the battery bank and charging my phone. I've got my clothing bag. I'm not really going to show you what's in here because I've got my unmentionables in here, but basically got an extra set of boxers, I've got a set of socks, I've got a pair of gym shorts, and I've got an extra t-shirt in there, and that's it. That's all I need in here. Oh, and I've also got the leg sections of my zip-off shorts here. So if I do need a pair of pants, I just zip those on and I'm good to go. Second last thing that's in here is my first aid kit. Lately I've been thinking that I've got way too much stuff in here. This could probably be significantly condensed because I've got like wraps of gauze in here, all kinds of crazy stuff that realistically I'm not gonna need on a backpacking trip. So this could probably be condensed into something smaller. That'll probably be an upcoming project for a video on the channel. And then the last thing in this entire pack is my food bag. Just a Ozark Trail Walmart grade, I think it's a 15-liter dry bag. I always put in about 3 days worth of food in here when I go out on a trip. So that there is about 3 days worth of food. I could probably even extend that to 4 days, or if I was super conservative, even 5 days. This bike itself isn't really built for bike packing. It's got no suspension whatsoever, and all that bouncing around on the off-road trails is probably what popped my tire last time. Off-road, I definitely need to take it a little bit more easy. This is more of a touring bike. It's not meant to be used and abused like that. And it's heavy too. This bike is like 70 pounds. And that's why I can get away with wearing a backpack instead of having everything strapped to the frame, is because the center of gravity on it is already super low. So having all my gear on my back doesn't raise the center of gravity too much. So I don't find any control issues. It's got a nice wide wheelbase. I sit relatively low on it, you know, not high up like on a street bike or something like that. So that's it. That's everything that I have with me when I'm out bike packing on my electric bicycle. If you guys have any questions or any suggestions, leave them down below. Quick reminder to subscribe if you are new to the channel, and stay tuned next week for the completion of that TCT trip. All right, that's it guys. I'll catch you next video.